I think we're ready to go. So let's start. So my name's Callum here with Everything Wine on Vancouver Island, and I'm joined by Marty Clubb, who is the owner and managing winemaker at the amazing Clubb 41 winery in Walla Walla, Washington. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. It's easy to come all the way to Victoria, by Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Makes it a little bit easier, right? So just give us kind of a daily snapshot of what a day in the life of your shoes is at Le Col 41, your kind of day-to-day job that you do, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, as you can imagine, there's the pre-COVID day and then the during COVID day, which are different.
Right.
Because we really haven't during the last year we haven't really traveled very much, and historically that was a big part of the job, was going to the various places, like to visit you and to see our distributors and see our major clients. And so I traveled maybe a third of the time, and that all disappeared when COVID happened. But so our business is small. We do more wine than many people think. We're about 45,000 cases.
Okay.
But we have about 16 employees, which is not that many. And my family and I own the business, and so in some regards, I'm running the whole project. But to be honest with you, I focus more on managing the vineyards and winemaking and kind of the big picture and some of the kind of the marketing trips.
What makes, I guess, like Walla Walla and a few other the vineyards that you're in, like Seven Hills and all that kind of stuff, what makes it unique and special compared to anywhere else in the world, for example?
Well, maybe I just back up and talk about Washington State. Kind of what are the big picture? What are the driving elements that make Washington State a great place to grow grapes?
Yeah.
As you know, since we border British Columbia, part of it is the northern latitude, and really what that northern latitude does is really a couple things. It puts us in what I consider a more intense life cycle of our vine. We have actually pretty hard winters, cool spring, sunny, warm catch-up summers, and then a cool, long, protracted fall. And so that more intense life cycle really does impact the quality of your fruit. It's like we just have enough heat units and weather to get the fruit ripe. And that's really where you really, to do really great winemaking, you just want to be right there on the cusp, because you don't want to ripen the fruit too fast. You want that sense of balance, the better acidity levels in the fruit. And so ideally, we're just situated in the right spot. And then the other thing about Eastern Washington is we're in the rain shadow of these two big mountain ranges, right, the Olympics and Cascades. And what that does is really protect us from the incoming Pacific wet weather. And so while you on Vancouver get more than your fair share of rain,
yeah,
we only say 8 inches of rain a year. And we have 300 days of sunshine every year.
Yeah, I was reading, although, as I was saying earlier, it's snowing here on the island today, but I was reading that actually in eastern Washington State, that roughly you guys get the same annual rainfall as the Gobi Desert, which a lot of people, when they associate Washington State, they think of wet weather and rain and the Space Needle and Starbucks and Microsoft probably, but they definitely associate rain. But then also what people don't realize is the Cascade Mountain Range just takes away a lot of that precipitation in the eastern part of the state, and yeah.
As you know, Washington State really there's two sides. The west side, which is what most people know of with the Olympics and the Seattle, the Puget Sound.
Right.
They get quite a bit of rain over there.
They do.
And far more than we do here. But because of the mountains, the incoming Pacific storms have to lift, and that lifting of the weather tends to pull the moisture. And so by the time you get to eastern Washington, it's pretty sunny and dry. And so Washington is known as the Evergreen State,
Right.
that's the west side, and
Yeah.
we're known as the Nevergreen side of the state.
Yeah.
Not about Eastern Washington, but it
Yeah.
is pretty much a high desert.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's and actually the grapes thrive in those conditions, generally speaking, right?
Yeah,
Which
so
is good.
it's challenging in the sense that it can be cold at night, but it warms up in the day, and that creates what's considered a big diurnal temperature differential between
Right.
day and
Day and night. Yeah.
and that's actually ideal for grape growing because you get the warm sunny days to ripen the fruit, but then those cool nights give you a sense of freshness of fruit and better acidity retention. And so the balance that you get with the wines grown in our location is really wonderful. And then combine that, the other part of the equation is the soils. We have a combination of volcanic soils from 15 million year old lava flows. And
Wow.
then at the time of the Ice Age, I only say this to Canadians, the Canadians delivered all this glacial Ice Age flood silts into eastern Washington. So we're actually growing on ground granitic Canadian soil in eastern
There we go.
and,
You're
there we go.
welcome.
So that's why it's so good here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Not a problem. Glad we could help in some way. Um, so yeah, one of the other questions that I really wanted to ask you was, what kind of new projects are you guys just starting or have a vision towards in the future that you can maybe share with us? Because um, the wine industry is, as you know, is constantly moving and evolving and changing. And
Right.
so, what are you guys doing there at Le Col 41? That's quite exciting for you.
Right. Well, we've been trying to develop our own estate vineyards here in the Walla Walla Valley now for quite a number of years. And our first vineyard, and I think we were going to talk about that, is Seven Hills Vineyard. And we're a partner in Seven Hills with Leonetti and Pepperbridge. And it's a fairly large vineyard. It's like 170 acres.
Right.
But Le Col uses maybe 25% of all the fruit grown at Seven Hills, so it's a significant vineyard for us.
Right.
And what's really cool about Seven Hills, it's one of the first planted vineyards in the Walla Walla Valley, so it's some of our oldest vines. And it's located on the south side of the valley where it's a little bit warmer and very deep wind-blown loess sitting on glacial ice age flood silt soils. So the wines from Seven Hills are really pretty, very floral, a nice cherry, cedary note. But there's kind of a unique marker with that particular site where the wines just tend to be more elegant. They tend to have a little silkier, smoother, dusty, chalky tannin feel to them, and really just beautiful, consistent quality from Seven Hills.
So we touched on a little bit about Ferguson, so we may as well continue with that. My understanding is so Ferguson was the original wine, right? Or the original vineyard, I should say, site, and then
Not quite.
Okay.
So my wife's parents were Gene and Baker Ferguson,
Right.
and they first ran the winery in the 1980s.
Right.
And I got involved and started building the Walla Walla vineyards in the 1990s. We actually, they were older when they started the winery, and they both passed on. Gene passed in like 1998 and Baker in 2005. And at that time, we did a Ferguson commemorative reserve bottling from these really old vineyards that they had been working with for 25 years. And that was our start of doing something called Ferguson.
Right.
And then a few years later, we realized, if we're going to continue this legacy in honor of them, we need to plant a vineyard. And so we planted a vineyard close to Seven Hills, but it's a much higher elevation, planted in fractured basalt, and we named it Ferguson. and our first vintage of that was 2011.
Right. Okay. Because yeah, I have the 2014 here,
Ah,
Ferguson.
perfect. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So amazing wine. Absolutely one of my favorite examples of Washington State wine.
Well,
Absolutely one of the
I'm
best.
gonna tell you just a couple of little fast tidbits about Ferguson
Yeah.
that I think your customers might be interested in.
Absolutely.
Very first vintage, 2011, which is a cool vintage, we entered in the Decanter World Wine Awards in London.
Okay.
And as you're probably aware, that is judged by this bevy of masters of wine
Yep.
and some master somms. But to get any kind of medal in the Decanter World Wine Awards is a pat on the back.
For sure.
And it's run by Stephen Spurrier,
Yep.
the same guy that did that put Napa on the map,
On the map,
with
yeah.
the big tasting in Paris that happened. And we ended up winning a gold medal, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
And they work their competition is regional gold medals would go into a consideration to win, say, the best American Bordeaux blend, which we won.
Yeah, which is
then
incredible.
Into an international tasting against the other best Bordeaux blends from around the world, and we won that. So we won the international trophy for best Bordeaux blend in the world from Decanter World Wine Awards. That put Ferguson in the spotlight.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, is that one of the kind of, I guess, top achievements that you found? I mean, obviously,
yeah, absolutely.
This winery is still evolving and still growing, and the sky's the limit, right? So you were talking obviously about Decanter, and obviously it's a massive achievement for Ferguson and winery in general, and really putting that wine and the winery on the map internationally. But also, you guys are pretty consistently ranked as well as the top 100 wineries of the year in Wine and Spirits magazine. What I say is like 15 consecutive
15
years.
Times. Yeah, 15 times. Not all consecutive years, but we've in the last 20 years, let's say we've been awarded a Wine and Spirits top 100 winery of the year 15 of the last 20.
Yeah. So how does that make you feel? Do you, I know some wineries don't necessarily care too much about points. I mean, using that's points is maybe a little bit of a separate topic as far as individual wines and things like that. But how does that make you feel? That kind of recognition.
Well, to be honest with you, we've done successful with a lot of critics over the years. We've had like 4 wines in the Wine Spectator top 100 and multiple wines in the Wine Enthusiast top 100, and we get great reviews and Robert Parker and elsewhere. But I really love the Wine and Spirits team. The quality of their wine magazine is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the effort they put into selecting a winery to be a Wine and Spirits top 100 wine of the year is quite substantial. And basically it means they're looking at the entire portfolio, not just 1 or 2 bottlings. They're looking at the success and the quality of like the whole picture that the winery is doing. And when they select, it may sound like 100 wineries are chosen. I would say maybe 40% of those are from the U.S. and 60% of those are from wine regions all over the world. So when they say 100 wineries, it's a selection of wineries from all over the world. So it's a real pat on the back just to get even one top 100 winery of the year.
Yeah.
And I believe to have achieved 15, that puts us in what they call their premier cru list of wineries. And there's less than 20 wineries that have done what we've achieved.
Yeah, which is huge. I mean, I looked at the list last night, and I mean, they're picking like 3 wineries only from Argentina, and yes, there's a little bit heavier on the U.S., but then when you look at it, a lot of it's California, some Oregon. So when you're looking at Washington State, there's maybe 2 on there, 3. So as you say, the list is very small, and so to be considered in that is a massive achievement. So well done.
They were early in the curve of recognizing the quality and caliber of wines being made in Washington State. And so we were one of several other wineries in Washington State that have achieved great success in that competition. We're not the only one, but the fact that we achieved it that many times really does narrow us down to being one of the top wineries in the state.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I guess I just have one last question, which is more of a personal question on my side, because I grew up with the lovely, colorful wine labels that you guys used to have with the kind of the crayon drawing. And I think I was reading it was actually a competition you guys did, and it was won by like an 8-year-old or something. So I guess my question is, I love those labels so much. Why the change, and what do the new labels represent?
Okay, well, you and anybody in the Northwest who discovered our wines in the early days fell in love with that label.
Yeah.
And I actually sat here because I knew you were going to ask me that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There you go. There it is.
On the wall.
Very cool.
So yeah, that label really was catchy. It was colorful. It was whimsical. It stood out on the shelf. It was unique and different than what any other winery had 25 years ago.
Right.
And so in the Northwest, it really worked. But as we grew and became more of a broadly distributed and now today even an international brand, the label didn't really convey the caliber and quality of the wines we were making. In fact, so what really happened was, you remember when the kind of the negotiant wines started putting all the animals and the critters on the label, and then the splashy, colorful, labels. Well, they became identified with basically lower-priced negotiant wines, and so unfortunately, that old original label, which was really cool, had the wrong connotation and didn't really say, hey, we're a first-class winery making first-class wines with unique, distinctive, terroir-driven single vineyard varieties. It didn't say that. And so we, of course, wanted to stick with the old Frenchtown Schoolhouse, which is our name. L'École is the school in French, school district number 41. And the drawing that we've come up with now, that photograph or that artwork was from a early photo of the school taken in like the 1920s.
Right. So it's like so it's the original building.
It's the original building, and I'm actually in that building right now. This is our winery is housed inside the schoolhouse, and I'm actually in the tasting room right now.
And so this photo was taken like one of kind of the first photos of this building, I guess, back in.
It was actually it was in 1915, because that was the year this building first built. There was a deeper, longer history of the Frenchtown School that dated back all the way back to when the French-Canadian Hudson Bay Company first settled the Walla Walla Valley and created a Frenchtown community. And there was an old Frenchtown school on the Walla Walla River. Eventually, that was located in the location we are today, and then the school building that we're in today was built in 1915. So we, 5 years ago, we celebrated the 100th year birthday of this old school building, which we're in. So the Semillon on the white side, I'm just going to make a few quick comments.
Yeah.
Semillon is a world-class variety, but it doesn't do well in a lot of growing conditions. It's a berry that tends to get too big and fat, but in our relatively dry growing climate, we can grow smaller berries, smaller clusters, and get that more concentrated fruit. It also does really well on the glacial ice age flood soils that we have. It picks up a little bit more of that minerality. We tend to have that slightly higher natural acidity. It's done much like a classic Bordeaux white Grave, in that it's barrel fermented, aged in barrel, but it's mostly older barrels so that not to over oak the wine. We use a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc in the blend to just give it a little bit of a flinty, crisp finish. But you tend to have these really pretty floral aromas, orange blossom, peach, melon, pear, honeysuckle, and then you almost get this dried fruit, apricot, fig. It's just got a lot of. It also is a wine that has a lot of texture and viscosity. And
Right.
so, being a little weightier, it's very food friendly. It will go with like anything that has goat cheese.
I was gonna say, yeah, goat cheese would be very good. So funnily enough, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think personally you guys are more well known and I guess maybe more internationally for your red wines. But it's funny
We
that
are.
this was the wine that I first, as I say, I first tried from Le Col 41 was the Semillon. I had the 2013 vintage a number of years ago, and and that's what turned me on to your winery was actually the white. Fantastic, yeah. And then we're gonna do the Cabernet Sauvignon here.
The big selling point there is because we've been making wine for 38 years now in Washington. We were able to get in with some of the oldest vines from around the state, and so our average vine age in this bottling is well over 25 years. And the big older vines have these big gnarly roots, and they old vines tend to be more immune to the particular vintage characteristics of that particular year. They tend to harvest a smaller crop. They tend to be better balanced. They don't, the berry size tends to be smaller, and the overall balance in terms of pH and acidity just perfect. And with our weather, this is always almost a guaranteed October harvest. And so we tend, with that long hang time, you tend to get a little bit bolder, richer structure, which gives this wine great ageability. And so it's just classic Cabernet, Cassis, dark plum, a lot of rich aromatics. You'll like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was my Christmas present to myself a couple of years ago. I love this wine. This is always just a really solid wine. So, and then last we got. So you got a series of three actually estate wines, or Walla Walla Valley wines. So obviously we spoke about the Ferguson, which is your flagship wine, but then you've also got the Perigee and the Apogee as well. So
Yeah.
we carry here the Perigee. So if you could talk a little bit about this one here.
Okay, so this is Seven Hills Vineyard. This is the vineyard we first started talking about. It's our oldest vineyard in the Walla Walla Valley. It's on the south side of the valley. It's a slightly warmer site, and the advantage of that is that the later maturing Bordeaux varieties, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot, do well there. So if you look at the label, it's got all five Bordeaux varieties.
Right.
It's Cab dominant, but then Merlot, Cab Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot. And that means even though it's all from one site, you get an explosive range of fruit profile. You've got the body and structure, the backbone, the ageability that the Cabernet provides. Then you have the fruitfulness from the Merlot. That's more that black cherry, blackberry fruit. Cabernet Franc for us is more on the floral, aromatic side. It's rose petal. It's a little herbal, but a positive. When I say that, I mean in a really positive way. Malbec has that kind of minty mocha mid-palate lift on the wine. And Petit Verdot is like blackberry pie in a glass. It's dark black. It's like high natural acidity, but a little touch of it just lifts the aromatics. And so it's a wonderful site to have the full five varietal array from Bordeaux.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much, Marty, for your time, and we really appreciate it. And yeah, just love all the wines, love what you're doing. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, and thanks for representing our wines in Victoria.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
everywhere else you guys are. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. Continue to do that. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.